I came into this Myrtle Beach stay really excited. This is a newer Oceanfront Holiday Inn Club vacation resort, and based on the photos and the hype, I honestly thought this might be one of the highlights of the trip. But my actual experience was more mixed than I expected. The room had some strong points, but the overall resort left me feeling a little disappointed. So today I'm giving you an honest room and resort tour, what worked, what didn't, and whether I'd personally stay here again. First impressions matter, especially when you're arriving for a beach vacation. From the outside, the resort definitely had that newer, modern look, and I was excited to finally experience it for myself. Based on everything I'd seen online, I was expecting something relaxed, polished, and worthy of all the excitement surrounding this property. After my Uber driver dropped me off on the lower level, it would have been nice for someone to welcome arriving guests and assist with luggage, or at least help direct first-time visitors to the lobby. Instead, I found myself looking around to figure out where to go before eventually finding the elevator to the upstairs. It's certainly not a major issue, but I do think having a greeter or a concierge at the arrival area would create a much warmer first impression. Once I reached the lobby, the very first thing that caught my attention was that incredible ocean view. It's absolutely beautiful and naturally draws you outside. And honestly, on a sunny day like this, that's exactly where you'll want to spend your time. But it also made me wonder, what if the weather isn't cooperating? Once you step back inside, the lobby itself didn't give the same impression. The furniture felt generic. The decor was limited to only a few simple photos on the wall, and I was surprised there wasn't any flowers, plants, or greenery to bring some warmth and life into the space. One detail I couldn't help but notice was the lower level entrance doors. Every time they closed, they would slam shut loudly enough to startle guests. It may seem like a small thing, but after hearing it over and over throughout my entire stay, it became one of those little details that was hard to ignore. Now, none of these things ruined my stay on their own, but together they made the lobby feel more like an entrance to a condominium than a welcoming centerpiece to a beachfront resort. For a newer oceanfront property, I simply expected a stronger first impression. Let's start with the room, because honestly, this was the strongest part of the stay. Walking in the room had that nice layout and felt very functional for a beach resort stay. I always appreciate having a kitchen or a kitchenette set up on a trip like this, especially when you're staying near the beach and you don't want every snack, drink, or coffee run to feel like a major outing. The bedroom was simple, but comfortable enough for the weekend. The bathroom was one of the areas where I wanted to pay the most attention, because in a newer resort, I expect things to feel fresh and well thought out. It was also very convenient having a washer and dryer inside the room. The balcony and the views are definitely the best parts of staying oceanfront. Even if the overall resort experience isn't perfect, having access to that beach and a view always helps. My issues with the room were fairly minor compared to the overall resort. Nothing felt completely ruined by the stay, but there were a few details that kept it from feeling as polished as I expected. I wish the balcony and the chairs were more comfortable with armrests. And the counter between the bedroom and the bathroom, it had a sink, but no soap to wash your hands. Like I said, very minor, but still something I observed. Now let's talk about the resort amenities, including the food and beverage options, because this was part where I had the most mixed feelings throughout my stay. I'll start with the positives. The coffee and the bar drinks were actually 2 thumbs up. I always appreciate when a resort makes it easy to grab a good cup of coffee, and this was one of the areas that worked best for me. The food, however, was more hit or miss, and honestly, mostly disappointing. The 2 standouts were the smash burger and the grilled cheese sandwich. Those were the items I enjoyed the most and would actually recommend from what I tried. But outside of those, the food offerings didn't match what I'd hoped for from a newer oceanfront resort. They also had a wine sampling station, which sounded like a great idea. I actually loved the idea of it, but the selection really didn't impress me. The wines felt pretty standard, the kind of bottles I could easily find back home at my local grocery store. So I didn't feel like it was a special tasting experience. For something like that to stand out, I would have loved to see unique selections, maybe regional wines or smaller labels or something that feels more curated. And that's the kind of theme I kept coming back to with this resort. There were good ideas here, and there were some things definitely worked well. But for a newer oceanfront property, I wanted the food and the beverage experience to feel intentional. Something that made me want to stay on the property longer and enjoy the resort itself. To be clear, there were things that I did like. The room was functional and it had incredible views. The beach access was convenient and the oceanfront location is a real advantage. I could also see how this resort might work for some travelers, especially if the room and the location are the main priorities, because you're planning on exploring the city instead of the resort. For me, it all starts with the arrival experience. Having a greeter or a concierge on the lower level to welcome guests and help direct first-time visitors to the lobby would immediately create a warmer and more memorable first impression. Once inside, I'd love to see the lobby better reflect this incredible oceanfront location. The views are absolutely beautiful, but adding more comfortable seating would encourage guests to slow down, relax, and really enjoy the scenery. I also think coastal-inspired decor, fresh flowers, and more greenery would make the space feel warmer and more inviting, even when the weather isn't ideal outside. I'd also love to see the food and beverage experience elevated. The menu actually offered a nice variety of choices, so it wasn't a lack of options. In my opinion, it was more about the execution. The coffee and the cocktails were the definite highlights, but more consistently well-prepared meals would give guests another reason to spend more time dining on property. The wine sampling is another area with a lot of potential. Rather than featuring wines that are commonly found at most grocery stores, I think showcasing regional selections or smaller boutique wineries could create a much more memorable guest experience. And finally, it's often the little details that leave the biggest impressions. Something as simple as quieter lobby doors and a few thoughtful finishing touches throughout the property would make this resort feel more polished and welcoming. So would I stay here again? Honestly, probably not. And that's not because everything was bad. The room had great features, the location is oceanfront, and I'm glad I got to experience it for myself. But for me, the overall resort experience didn't live up to what I had hoped for. I wanted it to feel more welcoming, more polished, more relaxing, especially for a newer property with so much hype around it. As always, this is just my personal experience. If you've stayed here and had a different experience, I would genuinely love to hear about it in the comments. But for this trip, the resort was a letdown for me. I always want Patio Passport to be a place where I can share the fun parts of travel, but also the honest parts. So let me know in the comments. Have you ever stayed somewhere where it looked great online, but it didn't quite match the experience in person? And if you enjoy these vlogs and want to support the channel, you can join me on Patreon as a patio travel companion. Your support helps keep me exploring and sharing honest travel experiences. Thank you so much for traveling with me.